There's always a way, right? Like, it might not be the easiest way, but you can always find a way to make things happen for yourself. And they might be on a lot smaller scale at first, but what I found is like going through life that new doors open up all the time and you meet new people and it's all about networking. And it's not always just about money, but it's about relationships, right? Like just stay at it. I mean, I think that the biggest thing, obviously for me was just going into something I was just loved to do, and it became a career. And sometimes I look back and I'm like, how did this even happen?
Welcome to Passion to Reality, the podcast dedicated to following your passion and achieving your dreams. I am your host, Matt Liller. I am very excited to bring an interview in today's episode with Matt Hagan. Matt is a 3-time world champion drag racer in the funny car division, and at the time of recording this podcast, he ranks 4th all-time in career wins. In this interview, Matt talks about how he found and developed his passion for drag racing, what his early years looked like, and now today, how he balances being a world champion with family and other business ventures. And Matt also explains what it's like to drive 338 miles an hour in under 4 seconds, something that most of us mere mortals will never ever experience. And so please sit back and enjoy this interview with Matt Hagan.
Matt, can't thank you enough for being here and taking some time out of your busy schedule to be with the podcast, man. Really appreciate it.
Oh, glad to be here, man. Like I said, it's one of those things where this kind of grows my brand and gets people out there that are your listeners that may not know about what I do. And so anytime we can take the time to do some of that stuff is really cool.
Really appreciate it. So we know that your resume and your accolades on the racetrack speak for themselves. I want to kind of peel back the layers a little bit and kind of go back to the beginning. How did you find your passion for drag racing?
Yeah, man, I've had so much tire shake. Let's see if we can get back to the beginning. But honestly, I really never set out to be like a drag racer. I had a family friend that worked here at my dad's dealership, and he drag raced, on a local track. And he says, come on, man, like you're going to go with me this weekend. And I didn't know anything about it, and he's got a 69 Dart that it was called a gear jammer. And basically, as you jam the gears, this thing picks the front end up and sits on the bumper. And, at like, I don't know, I was 12 years old or something like that. And I was like, wow, that is cool. You know what I mean? I was like, I didn't know cars could really do that at that age. And, obviously I was still too young to drive. And, but I just really was like excited about it, and he let me be a part of it. Like, those cars, they have to put a number on it to race it as far as in a bracket. And he let me, write his number on with shoe polish and, clean the car down and air his tires up. And, at 12, you think, wow, I'm doing something, and so I was hooked, and so at the time, I was like, how do I get to do something like this, and so they had 4-wheeler drags on, I guess I think it was Friday nights that you could take your 4-wheeler up there. Well, I had a 4-wheeler, so I was like, I'm going to drag race my 4-wheeler, and so got up there and we started, beginner's luck or whatever. I don't know. I went to the final. I didn't win, but I won like $130, at 12 years old. And I was just like, I can make money doing this. I was like, oh, all right. So, started doing that on the regular and turned 16. And with my dad's dealership, I started stealing cars off his used car lot and taking them up there. And he'd come back and, the transmission be out of them or like the tires would be bald. And he kind of got wind of it, I think, and I mean, I didn't really, I guess tell him too much about it, but he was like, no, I got to sell this stuff. He's like, let's help you get a race car, and so I started, with this 406. The motor was an old Chevy 2 Nova. It had a 406 in it with a slapstick, and so it's like you hit one shift light, and I can't even remember how fast I was going, but it wasn't very fast, you know what I mean? But it was just like it started me out, and I was just like, man, I'm into this, and as time goes on, you're moving through high school and getting into college and stuff. And I wanted to go faster and faster. Right. And so we kind of like traded around and got this old, it was a Firebird. I think it had a 632 motor in it with 2 systems of nitrous, but it looked like someone cut their kid's swing set up and put it together. You know what I mean? This is definitely not the safest car I've ever been in, but it was a faster car. And what happened was like they started having these races that it didn't matter how fast you went. You just had to be the fastest 8 cars on the property to get to race each other. So they call them quick 8s. And so basically I started showing up and, spraying this thing with nitrous and getting it going and to make these quick 8 fields, and those tracks were so bad that you really didn't need a super fast car. You needed something that would go down the racetrack, and so, I don't know how it worked out, but I started winning some of those, and then, you start making some money and you start saving up for a car and dad's getting pretty pumped up about it. And, one thing leads to another and you're just running around all over the East Coast with, these cars, and you're just starting to run these quick 16s and quick 8s and stuff like that, and doing stuff out in Piedmont for Big Dog. And, it just kind of like evolved, you know what I mean? And, I never looked up and was like, man, I want to make a career out of this. I just was like, this is cool to do. I'm doing it on the weekends. I'm making some side cash, and, you win some of that stuff. I mean, sometimes we were winning $50,000, $60,000 in cash, and,
wow.
and it's like, you go up there and get your bag of cash and you're like, I gotta get out of here. Someone's gonna rob me, but it's wild how it just kind of evolved into that. And, as you're doing it, you want to go faster and faster. And obviously it's more expensive to do so. So then you got to find a sponsor, right? Like, so it gets to be where like, we're doing all right, but we got to figure this out. How do we go from there? And, dad with the dealerships and stuff, we started just on a local level with some Pennzoil people and oil and different things like that. And that's not enough like real money, but it starts getting you kind of entry fees and gas money and different things like that. You're running the sticker and stuff, and, just kind of going from there. So I decided that I was going to run the AMS series, Pro Mod series, back when I guess I was 19, 20 or whatever. And it takes big money to be out there on the NHRA tour to do that. And so we were selling gas at Dad's racetrack, and there was a guy out there that was sponsoring all these cars in the NHRA series, and this guy was handing out money left and right. And you were going like, well, Mr. Knoll, why don't we sell your gas at our racetrack and you sponsor some of the race cars? It's called a B2B plate, a business to business, right? And, and so he was like, yeah, here you go. Here's $600,000, kid. And so I was like, whoa, that's pretty cool. You know what I mean? So we did that for a little while, and Evan calls me up one day and he says, look, this Pro Mod stuff's great. He said, but I have an IHRA series, which is actually a step down from NHRA, but it wanted me to be in a faster class, which is a fuel car. And, I said, I don't know if I want to go that fast. You know what I mean? Those things are on fire all the time. They're 300 miles an hour and, and they're exploding all the time, and so, he's like, well, here's the deal. I got a couple $1,000,000, and he said, if you don't take it, I'm going to hand it out to someone else, and I was like, well, we're going to take your money. So kind of one of those things where, we did sponsorship with him for a year, and then you couldn't get him on the phone. And it's this crazy deal, man. And he obviously didn't know anything on the backstory, but he was sponsoring 4 other cars out there and some other stuff. And so then he gets audited for, they have a fuel excise tax. And basically he had been embezzling money from the government, and it was over $130 million that he embezzled and was giving it away to racers. And so like, you're going like, whoa, I wonder if the government's coming after the money, but they were like, no, we're just running it down. It's different when you get the FBI to call you, and it's like, they're like, no, nobody's in trouble. This falls on him, but we just need to know where the money went and how it was spent and stuff like that. So I guess I kind of owe my start to our taxpayers. So thank you guys for paying all your taxes and stuff. But unbeknownst to us, you know what I mean? Like, it was kind of one of those things, everyone was shocked by it, you know what I mean? And so, but that actually got me my start in a fuel car, which, they cost several $1 million to run. And then I crossed over to NHRA, which is the bigger series, because I was in IHRA, and I outqualified Forrest Selzy and Tommy Johnson Jr., which were big names at the time. And my boss that I worked for 13 years, he came over and he was like, who are you? You know what I mean? So it sparked an interest, kind of right place, right time. And he said, Gary Selzy's retiring out of my camp. He said, wants to go home and be with his family and different things like that and run his businesses back there. And he's like, I need a wheelman, you know what I mean? So he says, why don't you sell all your stuff and come drive my car? And I was like, well, that sounds great, since we're out of sponsorship over here and this guy's going to prison, So I was like, absolutely, So we inked up a contract, and, away we went on the Don Schumacher program, and that's the short story of it. Yeah. But it was crazy how it evolved into being in a fuel car and now winning 3 championships. And, I just won my 44th race this last weekend in Gainesville. And, so it's just, and I guess that puts me at the fourth time all winning driver in the history of the sport, which is incredible. Cause I never like look, you never seek out to be like, you just want to drive the car and go fast. Right. And then but for me, I've been so fortunate that I've had good people around me that are smarter than me, that work harder, they show up early, they leave late, and they just, you surround yourself with good people and good things happen, but the short end of it is that kind of the right place, the right time, kind of fell into a guy that had some money at the time. But then it kind of got me out there on the scene, and then, you get to show off your skills of what you're capable of doing. And, and it sparked the interest of DSR, and, we put a deal together, and, but man, we've had some sponsors that just kind of like almost fell through. And we had a guy that basically inked a 3-year deal with us, when I first started to drive for Don, and he come out of a Formula One car as far as sponsoring it. And so you don't think anything, right? So he had a third brake light cover. So basically when you hit the brakes, the third brake light blinks. So it was kind of like a warning system. So this guy has a legitimate company and everything else. Well, we ink up the trailer, everything's wrapped, the car's wrapped, everything, all this stuff. Well, we get to the second race, which is Phoenix's home race, check bounces, and we're like, do what? So it's always challenging out in motorsports as far as staying out there. And I've been blessed to be out there almost 15 years in a fuel car, and which is, I've seen so many people come and so many people go, and, and it takes so much money and so much corporate America to be out there. So, been very, very blessed to have the career that I've had so far.
Yeah. When you were 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, just starting out, what did your friends and family think, when you were getting into this? I mean, were you crazy? Was everybody worried about, oh, it's a dangerous sport, don't do it?
Yeah, I mean, Mom wouldn't watch me really, you know what I mean? She's like, freaked out and stuff. But, honestly, it's kind of, most folks were just like, oh, they think it's a hobby, you know what I mean? You never, it's a hobby for a lot of folks that never really evolved into a career, and it just, for me, I think, having the support of my dad, him saying like, yeah, let's go do this. You know what I mean? And sometimes I wonder if he doesn't really care about me because he lets me go 300 miles an hour every weekend, and it's like, go do it, but it's, but in reality, it's really, without my support of my dad out here, it probably would have fell through several times, and just him putting deals together and him making stuff happen on the side, behind the scenes with other companies to keep some of this stuff going. And really, in today's world with corporate America, it's more about the B2B business. You know what I mean? The race car needs to win. Obviously it's a tool, and it's something that we pride ourselves on doing. But, like when I was at Don's, we took Pennzoil and our Dodge sponsorship and put them together. Pennzoil is now a direct pour for Dodge. And so when Pennzoil is pouring oil into all these factory vehicles, they're making money. Dodge is saving money. And having that B2B play that's multi-million-dollar, deal. The race car is great, but you put those partners together, they're really happy when they're making millions of dollars behind the scene, so the race car becomes a tool for marketing and for, basically going out here and there are people to come into hospitality and showing them a good time and you entertain them. So, don't get me wrong. It's always great to win, but when you're doing the behind the scenes stuff and making everybody money on the big level, as far as these corporation goes, you'll stay out there a long time,
You mentioned a little bit ago that, you're getting that big bag on the weekends, when you're starting out, and it was still a hobby, but you were making some decent money doing it, but at the end of the day, it was still a hobby. What were you doing? Did you have a day job back then, or was it racing only?
I was still going to college, and some of that stuff back then. I was getting out of high school, going into college, deciding whether I was going to try to play football or not. Realized I was just going to be someone's tackling dummy, you know what I mean? And didn't really have a future in that. So transferred schools, came back home to Radford, and just kind of like set up a race shop and started focusing on that, and then trying to work on some of our local sponsorships and stuff like that. But really decided, around that high school, college area that I was going to try to do this, you know what I mean? And it took people, and it takes, motor homes and stackers and equipment and, and a shop to do so. But, it was like something that I knew we're capable of doing. It's just a matter of like, are we good enough to do it? And are we good enough to be successful? If you're successful back then, 10, 15 years ago, sponsorship was a lot of times driven upon that, so, we kind of hit the ground running with some stuff, and I was able to, kind of put myself around the right people and do good, you know, and win some races and stuff like that. So that helped out a lot. But, you know, it never really set in, you know, that, hey, I'm doing this until, you know, I signed a contract with DSR and, you know, you're getting paid to do this. You know, you're a fly-in hired shoe, you know what I mean? You're going like, you know, you show up, you keep your mouth shut, you drive a race car and you fly back home, you know, and it's like, don't touch anything, you know? So when it's your own stuff and you're paying the bills and you're watching them come in and you see your budget and, you know, you're like, man, are we going to have enough budget to get to the end of the year? You know what I mean? Racing, much less put any coin in your pocket, you know? So there's a lot to owning teams and doing different things, but I got to experience a lot of that, you know, at a young age and realize, like, for me, the direction with racing is kind of let someone else pay for it and show up and drive, you know. But my boss a long time ago, he told me, he says, you know, when you're ready to own a fuel car, and I was like, well, what do you mean? He's like, you see that 55-gallon drum over there? He said, fill it full of $100 bills, set it on fire. And he said, watch it burn. He said, if that don't bother you, he said, let's go racing, you know. He said, but if it bothers you, you probably can't afford to go racing, you know. So that put a lot of stuff in perspective for me.
Wow. What were you studying when you were in college? Did
Yeah,
you have a major?
honestly, yeah. When I was I studied actually ag. You know what I mean? We had an ag program and stuff like that. So I got real in depth with the animal science and cattle program and different things like that. And then when I transferred over to Radford, they didn't have anything like that. So it was like RCPT, which is basically basket weaving, you know what I mean? Like, it's recreation, parks, and tourism. You learn to, but we did a lot of cool stuff like high ropes course, whitewater rafting, rock climbing, all that, rappelling, and all that kind of stuff. Well, so that was my major there. So it's just anything kind of outdoors, you know. It really, you know, sparked my interest. But when I was at Ferrum, it was more of a, you know, like, basically they had an ag program, and it was just, I mean, I was just loved it, you know what I mean? So I think that kind of sparked my interest to farm that I do now, you know what I mean? It kind of laid a foundation there, you know, to be able to be interested in it and be able to be excited about it and just have a passion for it, you know?
That is awesome. And we're going to talk about that other side of the passion in just a few minutes. So bridging the story forward just a little bit. So you've inked that deal with, you know, Don Schumacher Racing. You're in the big leagues now. How was that, you know, when you finally get on the track, you know, with the big dogs, you know, that, you know, rookie season or first couple seasons? How was that? You know, was that what you expected? Was it, you know, did you have to cut your chops a little bit? Or how was that go?
Intimidating. I mean, I think that, you know, I was still learning to drive a race car, right? Like, these things are so violent. They're so fast. We have almost a 13 G swing from a positive G to a negative G. We pull almost 6 Gs on a run and almost negative 7 Gs when the parachutes come out within, you know, 4 seconds. So yeah, tremendous forces on your body, trying to get your mind to slow down to figure out where the car's at, what it's doing, what corrections you got to make. So my mind, you know, early on hasn't slowed the car down. It took me probably a good 100 runs to where I felt comfortable in the car versus going, what's this thing going to do to me? And now I'm kind of like, all right, baby, what you got for me? You know, so it just that transition of speed and G-force and getting your body acclimated to that was massive. You know, I mean, I used to run a car that was going 200 miles an hour, and these things are going 330 miles an hour, and, you know, same distance. So it's like, that's a huge jump, you know, and these fuel cars, they run almost they run 260 miles an hour, I think it is. Some of them run 280 now to half track, you know. So it just, you're almost there by the time you're to half track, and it's just you're a little bit more out the back door, you know. So it's just kind of it's impressive how fast these cars are. I mean, we cover a football field in under a second. There's nothing on planet Earth that accelerates faster than a fuel car. So me even getting shot off of an aircraft carrier with F-16 or whatever, it's not as fast and not as many Gs, you know. So it's crazy. It's mind blowing, and I think that's why, you know, it's not that you run 330 miles an hour. You can go out to the salt flats and do that over 3 or 4 miles. You're going fast, but you don't, you know what I mean? It's that you do it in 1,000 feet. You know what I mean? That you're covering that distance. So that's what blows your mind, you know? So super intimidating for me as far as the first run I ever made in one. I was breathing so hard that I fogged up my visor, and they were coming over the radio. They were like, go. And I was like, I can't see. I was like, they're like, go, you're going to run out of fuel, go. And I was like trying to wipe my visor, and I was like, oh man, you know, but it comes down to the fear of the unknown, right? Like, so the first time you're a kid and you get up on the high dive and you look down, you're like, man, that's far, you know. It's like, but you take that jump and you hit the water and everything's okay. It's like, I can do this, you run back up there as fast as you can, and the same thing with a fuel car, it's like, can I do this? That doubt creeps in your head and, am I capable? What's this thing going to do to me? And you hear all these stories and you see all these guys that are on fire and blown up. And, I race with guys that got skin grafts all over their hands and different things like that. So it's, you put yourself in a situation, you're going like, man, I might really hurt myself here, So, it's a little bit more than jumping off a high dive, you know what I mean? So, but once you hit the pedal and you feel that and you're like, okay, I can do this, you know what I mean? You're like, now you get more excited about it and that fear kind of goes away. And I would never say that the fear ever goes away. I mean, I think that if you crawl in one of these cars and you don't think something's going to happen to you, you're foolish. It's just a matter of time when it does. I mean, you name it. I've hit walls. I've been on fire, blown bodies off. I mean, it's just you're rolling the dice, right? Like, so if you don't think it's going to happen, you probably shouldn't be in the car. So there's always that fear, and there's always that respect for that car because it can hurt you. But kind of off subject a little bit. My first fire was my worst fire, and when you're getting your license and, you have these pros sign off on you and all this stuff, and you got to go through a blindfold cockpit test and shut the car down and all this kind of stuff. That's great. But until you're in it the first time, it's like, I panicked, man. Like, I realized why people jump out of a skyscraper that are on fire, right? Like, you see that on the news, you're going like, why would they jump out of a skyscraper to their death? But the fire gets so hot, it's so intense that you want out. And that happened to me my first fire, and it was like my legs were getting blistered up, and you can just feel the heat coming over you, and your hands are hot, and there's just fire in your face, and you can't see where the car is, and you put it up against the wall and try to shave some speed off of it, and you're freaking out, and the parachutes burn off of it, and then you're like, oh my God, I'm gonna die, you know what I mean? And so you start taking in all this smoke, and and then one thing leads to another, and you're like, I wanted to jump out of the car, and it was probably still running 200 miles an hour. Thank God that my seat, I hadn't even unbuckled myself, you know what I mean? So it was just like calming yourself down and getting yourself out of that situation, which that taught me a very valuable lesson. Freaking out is not going to help you out of that situation, So really, truly being able to, all right, I need to hold my breath. All right, I need to get unbuckled. And you think that stuff is like, well, duh. But like in those situations, it's kind of like someone drowning, right? They push other people under. They do whatever it takes to stay over top of the water. Kind of same situation, So you have to remind yourself to slow down and do those things and get through those processes to get out of those. And after that, it's helped me along the way with all the other stuff I've had to deal with running one of those cars. But, until you're in those situations, no one can tell you how to do it, So it's kind of, I've been heat treated several times, and you just learn every time, something different. And, it's just, there's just always something. But I think that's why these fuel cars are so exciting, because you never know what you're going to get. It's like getting on a bull. You don't know how he's coming out the gate, man. You know what I mean? So it's always a ride, So, but that's where you get that adrenaline rush and you get that fix that you can't get anywhere else,
Yeah. What year was your rookie year? In
09.
The
09 for DSR. Yeah. So I ran my own car in a fuel car for the year before that, in 08, and we crossed over a couple times, but like really, truly running for a team.
And as we sit here today, you're a 3-time world champion. Depending on when somebody might be listening or watching this podcast, maybe that number will be a little different.
We sure hope so, yeah.
But as of recording today, 3-time world champion. And I believe the first world championship was 2011.
Correct.
And so you're only a couple years into the big leagues, and you're winning the world championship. And
I ran it up in 10. And honestly, my first year was 9, and I was still learning to drive the car, and much less try to win a championship, and I run it up that year, and it's so crazy that I had to, show up and only had to go 2 rounds. We usually run 4 rounds to win the race, and I just needed to go 2 rounds, and I'm a champion. My second year driving this car. Well, I go out first round, and John Forrest has to win the race to win the championship. And they put a camera in my face every round, and I learned a valuable lesson as a man, as you just can't pout, man. Like, you just can't, like, people crucify you, you know what I mean? So it's like, even though I wear my heart on my sleeve, you know what I mean? You can't just go get in a corner and hide, you know what I mean? And that's what I want to do. And that's what I did, man. I was like, get that camera out of my face, man. Like, and so, you create hate from other people, or they think you're pouty or whatever, but people that have never been in competition have no idea what it takes to get there. And, the people that do compete on a higher level, they understand what you're going through, because that pain that you have, that, when something's ripped away from you, that you in your mind, you've already won this thing, and it's just like someone rips your heart out, you know what I mean? And it's like that awful feeling. And, I watched him win the race. I watched him crown him as championship. I mean, I went over and shook his hand and all that kind of stuff. But like during the moments, it's gut wrenching, but I will say, it's easy to win well. It's hard to lose well, but that taught me a valuable lesson, as a young man to you have to learn to lose well, you know what I mean? And be respectful and all that kind of stuff. But it's kind of one of those things where that feeling, it really set with me all off season, and worked hard and, lost some weight and worked on my reaction times. And, I brought it the next year and we won the championship, and my team brought it, you know what I mean? Like everybody was like, we ain't gonna feel like that again this year, and come back and win the championship like that. And my second championship, we run it up the same kind of way. And the next year we won the championship. It's kind of like a punch in the gut. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, all right, this is not good. So, you do whatever extra it is so you don't feel that way again. You know what I mean?
After you won the first world championship in 2011, was that, and you're on the mountaintop, were you more motivated to come back in 2012 because you'd made it to the mountaintop, or was there some bit of complacency of, we did it, I accomplished the goal, now it's just kind of gravy after this?
Crazy deal is it's a team sport, right? Like, so I can leave on time and keep it in the groove, but if my car don't run, then I can't wish it to the finish line any faster, and vice versa. If my crew chief does a great job and I have a bad reaction time, he can't make it, you don't win races like that. So unfortunately, as much as I wanted to win again the next year, my crew chief was pretty complacent with, being a champion in his first time, and he pretty much partied the whole year. We actually DNQ'd that year, didn't win any races the next year. So it was just kind of like, it was a big joke, and he actually lost his job over it. But at the end of the day, it was kind of like, it humbles you, because it's like, as much as you think you contribute, it takes everyone in the sport to do that. You know what I mean? Like to turn 4 win lights on Sunday. So if you have, crew guys that are laying out, or not being where their feet are, you know what I mean? And not being, present, or your crew chief's not there mentally, and he's, not getting any sleep, or he just wants to hang out and celebrate what he did last year. Don't work, man. Like, it takes everybody. It's such a team sport, and we're all dependent upon each other. And, I won 3 races and a championship with my first crew chief, and I've won the rest with my other crew chief, Dickie Venables. And he's just, he's been amazing, man. He shows up every day, and, he doesn't have, family or kids, and this race car is it, you know what I mean? So he throws everything he has into it. He takes it home with him. He brings it, back to work with him. And, but it shows, I mean, to have that type of guy around you, that is that talented, that is that passionate about it. That's why we've been so successful,
You're now running for Tony Stewart Racing. How has that shift kind of, changed, made you more focused on things, or, refocused the passions?
Yeah. I mean, I was very concerned switching from DSR over to TSR. I've been with Don for 13 years, and, kind of, it's just on cruise control, right? Like, you're going to get to drive, what you're going to get paid, everything's kind of the way it is, and even if we didn't have sponsors, Don was wealthy enough, he threw his own money into it to make sure we were out there running. And, so to leave that kind of comfort zone, to step over to someone you don't know, someone that you never really been around, was scary to me. Like, I was like, man, I mean, I'm doing pretty good over here. We won some championships, and everything's good, and we won 3 championships with Don. But at the end of the day, I think that you have to step out of your comfort zone, and if you're not challenging yourself every day, you're not growing, right? So I've worked with a lot of sports psychologists along the way, and been blessed to have some really good ones, and read a lot of books on mind games and different things like that. And it's kind of like being on a high ropes course, right? Like, so if you're afraid of heights and someone puts you up there and you step out on that wire, you're not comfortable. But you're learning to deal with that. You have to put yourself in situations daily, but big situations like this is like step out of what's been comfortable, step into something new to grow. I mean, one of my sports psychologists I worked with, he had me out there playing pretend catch in front of everybody, all my peers. And I was like, I don't want to do this, man. He's like, no, we need to step out here and you're going to throw a fake ball to me, and you're going to catch a ball. And everybody's like, what? So, but, that made me uncomfortable. You know what I mean? And that in his mind, he was like, look, man, you have to be uncomfortable. Now, who cares, that you're people are laughing at you. Did it bother you? You good? Like, I was like, yeah, I'm good. But like, but you just, that type of mentality of like, hey, we're going to make you uncomfortable to grow, has to happen, and I think that's where it kind of allowed myself to step out of that comfort zone with Don and over to TSR. And it's been great. I mean, absolutely great. Tony is amazing to work for. He's a great guy, very, very team oriented, very driven as a competitor. And just takes care of his people, you know what I mean? So, was a great move, you know what I mean? And we haven't won a championship yet with him. It's be coming up on our second year. We just won the first race of the season, but the possibilities and the capabilities that he has as a team owner, with all of his resources and all the stuff that we're doing, it's there, you know what I mean? It's just a matter of putting all the puzzle pieces together, and so I was able to take my team that we had from DSR over to TSR. So there wasn't a huge transition other than getting to know a new team owner, and how he's going to react to certain situations, or is he going to, belittle you, or is he going to, put you down, or is like, how does he motivate, you know what I mean? And some people have different ways of motivating. I've had coaches in the past that they just beat on you, until you're in the ground and you pick yourself up. And other people are all about, hey, look, how do we, rally around you and, pump you up and bring you up, you know what I mean? And so, learning someone new, especially someone that pays your bills, cuts you a check, is scary, you know what I mean? So, but for me, I mean, I'm glad I did it. Our sponsors wanted to move in that direction. And, I think a lot of it has to do with like just taking a chance and trying something new. We've been over here and we've won championships in this environment. Let's see if we can go over and do it with someone else.
I've had the pleasure of knowing you for a couple of years now, and I know that you're a businessman and you have some business ventures outside of racing. And so how do you balance those other businesses and other things that you do with your passion for racing and that schedule and that toll that it takes on you?
Yeah, it was really tough for me to learn to do that at first because, what I realized after a while is it's not fair to be at the racetrack and have the business and the family stuff all going on there to my guys. I have 10 guys that look at me for their bread and butter, right? Like if we don't win rounds, they don't get bonus. They don't win trophies, so when I had to learn to, when I'm at the racetrack, to be at the racetrack, you know what I mean? And don't get me wrong, there's plenty of fires to put out every week with businesses and different things. I mean, it's you can't get around it, but you learn to pick, what's really important and what does need a phone call and doesn't, and different things like that. But there for the longest time, I tried to do both, I'd be on the road, I'd be doing business stuff, be in the tow vehicle, trying to answer text messages and phone calls and, all this other stuff. But that's not fair to those guys, and same when I'm at home, I leave the racetrack at the racetrack, you know what I mean? And I depend on my guys to go back to the shop and do what they need to do and make sure the car is ready to come back to the next race. And I believe in them. They, something for me is trust is not given, it's earned, right? And they have earned my trust with my life and with everything that we do. And, it's so I have to depend on them to do that, but so it was hard to turn the switch on and turn the switch off. But once I started doing that, I was more focused. I was more driven. I was more in the moment or in that zone, so to speak, where I was at, that saying of being where your feet are, and it rings true. You can't micromanage everything and be good at everything. You have to pick a direction. And maybe I'm just OCD like that. I don't know. Like I'm just, super obsessed with stuff. And when I'm in it, I'm in it. And when I'm out of it, I'm out of it. And that's what works for me, So, my dad's a great micromanager, he's got, 40 companies or something and, 600-700 employees, and it works for him. But for me, it doesn't really work like that. I have to be all or nothing, you know what I mean? And so when I'm there and I'm in the zone and it's like you can turn that switch up and you rise to the occasion, you know what I mean? But like, if you're thinking about this over here, you're doing that over there, it's tough. So, I learned that, my business will be okay on the weekends when I'm not here, but, the same vice versa when during the week when my guys are doing the car stuff, that's their gig. You know what I mean? So I come back home and I try to take my kids to school every day and pick them up and sports and, kind of just like ease the pain of my wife from where she's had to do all that all the time and let her sleep in a little bit, stuff like that. But it's a balancing act, right? Like you have to learn what works for you and what don't, and, what drives you, what motivates you, and, figure out how to key off of some of that stuff and then still manage your time at home with your kids and your businesses and everything else. Because no matter how many championships you win, no matter how much money you make, you don't ever get that time back with your kids. I mean, and I'll say that to anybody, is like, always pick your kids and your family over anything that you're doing that you're passionate about, because you can make all the money in the world, and that's great. Don't get me wrong, because everybody loves money, and anybody says, money ain't everything, well, try to do stuff without it, right? But when you start sacrificing those time with your kids, you don't get that back. I mean, when my little girl, my oldest little girl, she was like 3, and she's like hugging you, running out the door, and Daddy, don't go. And I mean, it just crushes you, man. You know what I mean? And, looking back, I should have been like, all right, let's go play. I'm going to go get on a plane. You know what I mean? But as you're going through it, you're so focused on building your career and being passionate about it, all in it, and so I think that's probably a regret that I have, because I travel so much. At one time I was traveling almost 47 weeks out of the year, you know what I mean? So it was just, you're gone, you're a couple days at home, and you're back on a plane and living in a hotel. And, so as much success as I had, and as much, opportunities that it's open for me, it's still not worth trading that time at home with your kids, So I don't know what the balancing act is there, but always, for me, it's like, pick them over what you're doing, and what you're doing will find a way to get there,
Yeah. You actually just answered my next question. So my very next question was going to be, nobody gets to where they are by themselves. And so, you've mentioned your family a lot, and I wanted to talk a little bit about what that family support means to you. But I think you just took the words right out of or the answer before the question. So what advice would you give to someone who is passionate, perhaps passionate in, an area that might not be the biggest mainstream passion of all time? The 15, 16, 17, 18-year-old kid who's identified their passion. It might be a long way off, and they might have a lot of obstacles to get there. But what advice do you have to somebody like that?
Yeah, I mean, there's always a way, right? Like, it might not be the easiest way, but you can always find a way to make things happen for yourself. And they might be on a lot smaller scale at first, But what I found is, like, going through life, that new doors open up all the time, and you meet new people, and it's all about networking. And, this person knows this person, and this company is over here, and like, oh man, this guy's a CEO of this company, and I'm really good friends with him, or whatever. And it's not always just about money, but it's about relationships, right? Like, just stay at it. I mean, I think that the biggest thing, obviously for me, was just, going into something I would just love to do, and it became a career. And I sometimes I look back, I'm like, how did this even happen? But it's the want and the drive to still do it. You know what I mean? Find a way to do it and make it happen. But, and not everybody has a dad with a dealership, you know what I mean? And opportunities to start off with local sponsors and different things like that. But I've seen so many folks come up. I had a guy the other day I was sitting on a plane with, and his kids doing dirt bikes. And he was just like, how do you get sponsors? And it really comes down to, like, finding somebody that you can do some B2B with, even if it's a small little company, find what they're doing, and that can make them money. And if you make them money with another company you can kind of try to bring in and save that company money, they're going to get together, that kind of stuff. So the B2B stuff really does work. But I would say a lot of it is just really networking out here with people, finding different folks and opening up new doors and creating new relationships. And for me, that has always opened up new sponsorship opportunities and new businesses and just new things that you make new friends along the way, So, but you got to stay after it. You got to believe in yourself, and you got to put a package together. You got to learn to sell yourself, and you have to, go above and beyond, because what separates you from the 5 other people beside of you, you know what I mean? And that's where I think a lot of people are like, I'm doing what I need to do, you know what I mean? But what separates you, no different when you come in and you look at someone's resume, like, why do you pick them? And I think people don't ask themselves that question. What makes me better? What makes me, stand out? What is, my test scores better, or do I show up and I'm dedicated, I'm working, all this stuff. I mean, you'll find out the people real quick that really want to do something, because they'll show up early and they'll leave late, and they'll put in the extra hours and all that kind of stuff. So, for me, a lot of times when we speak to groups of kids and different things like that, it's like, what are you doing to separate yourself from everyone else and not just be in the same mix, and a lot of it has to do with the people you surround yourself with, you know what I mean? Being motivated and driven, and finding people that are successful, you know what I mean? That's the biggest thing. I mean, you put yourself around successful people and it breeds success, but you put yourself around a bunch of people that are, not doing a lot of great stuff and it breeds on that too. So, I would say surround yourself with great people, be motivated, driven, and figure out what makes you better than everyone else.
Perfect. As we land the plane here, where can the people find you? Social media, businesses, that type of thing.
Yeah, Matt Hagan _FC for my Instagram. That's me doing it because most stuff's spelled wrong, so it's me on there. Hooked on Phonics didn't work for me, but that and Facebook, and usually Twitter. You know what I mean. But you can go to Hagan Cattle Company. We sell beef on the side as well. TrueHarvest.com for our CBD stuff with some of the businesses there. It just kind of, for me, it's, engaging with folks, you know what I mean? Like it's an opportunity to really be one-on-one with my fans, them ask real questions. I give them back real answers and stuff like that. I used to not really like social media at all because it's like, I don't have time for this. But when you break it down, it means a lot to these folks that do get to, talk and engage and be a part of what you're doing and really root for you. I don't really get a whole lot of, I guess, hate on my pages because, you have fans that really care about you. And a lot of times when someone goes in there and hates, man, there'll be like 10 people jump on top of them. You know what I mean? So it's cool. It makes me want to engage, because, I see so much hate out there on all these platforms and stuff and people trying to rip people down and pull them apart. And, it's just like, I've never in my life understood, why would you take the time to write something negative on someone's page or do something like that? It's like how bad of a place you have to be in to try to do that with someone. It's just like keep scrolling or do whatever. But so that's why I kind of didn't like social media, because when I first started, you could see all this stuff out there. But it's been refreshing to have, the support and the fans and that kind of stuff to when you do engage and they're very appreciative of it and, they just want to be a part of it. So it's pretty cool. But so, yeah, pretty much that for Matt Hagan _FC for my Instagram. I usually just do that. I stay on that for the majority of my time. But, and then it's got links to all of our beef companies and CBD and stuff like that as well.
Awesome. Well, Matt, really can't thank you enough for your time. We got we just started a new season. Yeah. Hopefully, depending on when people are watching or listening to this podcast, that multi-time world champion might, that number might be a little different.
At some point.
At some point,
try to pull down another one this year.
So we thank you so much for being here, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me on the show.